Blog Talk Radio.
We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. Sit quietly and we will control all that you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong. You are about to participate in a great adventure.
We interrupt this program with a special bulletin. America is now under martial law. All constitutional rights have been suspended. Stay in your home. Do not attempt to contact loved ones, insurance agents, or attorneys. Shut up. Do not attempt to think or depression may occur. Stay in your home. Curfew is at 7 p.m. sharp after work. Anyone caught outside the gates of their subdivision sectors after curfew will be shot. Remain calm. Do not panic. Your neighborhood watch officer will be by to collect urine samples in the morning. Anyone caught interfering with the collection of urine samples will be shot. Stay in your home. Remain calm. The number one enemy of progress is questioned. National security is more important than individual will. All sports broadcasts will proceed as normal. No more than 2 people may gather anywhere without permission. Use only the drugs prescribed by your boss or supervisor. Shut up! Be happy. Obey all orders without question. The comfort you've demanded is now mandatory. Be happy. At last, everything is done for you.
And welcome to Outer Limits on this Labor Day weekend edition. I'm your host, Steve Long, coming here from Edmond, Oklahoma. Again, thanks for tuning in to Outer Limits Radio. Coming at you every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Later on, we're going to be talking with former state legislator of Oklahoma and liberty activist Porter Davis about smart meters. And we will also be talking about some other stuff. Probably get into the Syrian war there a little bit, or the upcoming, impending, hopefully, that was Pennywise with Western World from the 2008 album Reason to Believe. We're going to jump in with our first segment, and those of you regulars know what I'm talking about.
Once upon a time in America.
That's right. For Once Upon a Time in America, where I give you what was going on this week in United States history in the past. Starting off with September 1st in 1897, the first underground rapid transit system in North America opens. That was the Boston subway. On September 2nd in 1789, the Department of the Treasury is founded. September 4th, 1781, the city of Los Angeles is founded by Spanish settlers. And in 1998, on September 4th, Google is founded by Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Stanford University. On September 5th, in 1774, the First Continental Congress assembles in Philadelphia. In 1836, Sam Houston is elected as the first president of the Republic of Texas. In 1882, the first Labor Day parade is held in New York City. And in 1975, on September 5th, Lynette Fromm attempts to assassinate President Gerald Ford. In 1628, on September 6th, Salem is settled as part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony by the Puritans. And in 1995, on September 6th, Cal Ripken Jr. plays his 2,131st consecutive game, breaking Lou Gehrig's 56-year-old record for the most consecutive games. On September 7th in 1921, the first Miss America pageant is held in Atlantic City. In 1963, the Pro Football Hall of Fame opens in Canton, Ohio. And on September 7th in 2008, the U.S. government takes control of mortgage companies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And we all know how well that turned out, don't we? Moving on, we're going to go into our little short but sweet Ottertainment segment. I'm going to go over some things that are that I've been reading this week that are going on in the entertainment world. Todd McFarlane has reported that production is likely to begin next year on a new Spawn movie. The original Spawn movie was released in 1997, starred Michael Jai White in the title role. McFarlane says he hopes it will be a quick shoot, but he has stated the film is going to be less superhero and more horror. Screening dates and locations have been announced for the documentary Filmage. Filmage documents the 30-plus career of pop-punk icons The Descendants. Closest screening location to Oklahoma City is going to be Dallas, Texas on October 9th. Other cities where the viewings will be are Nevada City, California, San Francisco, Oakland, Nova Scotia, Montreal, and Edmonton. Also in entertainment news, Dave House has released another song from his upcoming album Devour. The song is titled The Shine and can be streamed via punknews.org, absolutepunknet, and other internet outlets. I think you can find it on YouTube now. Devour, of course, is scheduled to be released on October 8th on Rise Records and is the follow-up to his 2011 album Resolutions. We're going to be playing that song, The Shine, here in just a little bit. Last bit of entertainment news we've got for all you Robotech fans. Robotech.com announced last week that they're releasing a 20-disc box collection of the Robotech animated series. The set will include all episodes of the Macross Saga, the Robotech Masters, the New Generation, and the Sentinels. Also included will be 2 animated films, The Shadow Chronicles and Love Live Alive. In addition to a ton of several special features, you can pre-order the collection for $89.98 at Robotech.com. And that's all we have for Ottertainment tonight. Let's jump on in. Really, I didn't have a whole lot that I wanted to talk about in regards to news. The big thing, of course, is the impending, the United States getting involved in the Syrian civil war. No big surprise that I'm not a supporter of that idea. I guess it all started when there was some alleged chemical attacks against the Syrian people. So there's a lot of people out there saying that we have a moral obligation as the leader of the free world to go in and intervene and make sure that these chemical attacks don't happen again. Really, if you ask me, what is us going and bombing a bunch of, what is us as the United States going to bomb them going to prevent others from doing this in the future? It's just not going to happen. Surprisingly, Barack Obama has decided he is going to do his constitutional duty as president and wait. He's not going to do any action until he gets approval from Congress, as he's supposed to, as detailed in the U.S. Constitution. I don't really think he's going to get approval, and it's just my opinion. The reason I think that he's not going to get approval is that from what I've been hearing, with the people who are against action in Syria, it's rather ironic because we're talking about people that you would commonly refer to as war hawks, like Senator James Inhofe and U.S. Representative James Lankford. When these guys, war hawk type people, are against action in Syria, you know that there's not a whole lot of support for the war. Speaking of the war and no support, there's been a lot of anti-war activity going on around the country. The Daily Caller reported that there were approximately 300 to 350 people gathered at front of the White House on Saturday to protest the military strikes. Even here in Oklahoma, we had two anti-war protests, well, two that I know of, going on yesterday. There was one in Tulsa, and there was one here in Oklahoma City, outside of the Penn Square Mall, which that was the one where I actually attended myself. It was me and my son, and it had a really good turnout, I thought. There was a really good write-up on it on the Red Dirt Report. So if you don't read the Red Dirt Report, you really should. That you can find that at reddirtreport.com. Good write-up there by Andrew. Then the local media was actually there, Channel 4, 5, and 9, if I recall. And actually, I think 25 was there as well. Anyway, so there was some decent news coverage of the event. A lot of people out there to support not going to war. A lot of people honking. There were some signs up there. There were, honk for peace type signs, and they got a lot of honks, and there really weren't too many people, from what I heard, that were not supportive of what we were all doing. And it's pretty amazing that we had such turnout with how hot it was yesterday. It had to have been probably one of the hottest days of summer, really, if you think about it. When I pulled up, the thermostat read 108, so it was pretty darn hot. But we had people there with water to keep people cooled down. Somebody even brought some watermelon. So, it was a good time to get together and not only protest the war and, show people that we don't approve of military action, but also a good time to get a hold of, or be around like-minded people, that also did not, get to know more people in the movement and whatnot. But anyway, so, that's really all I have to say as far as news, because that is the big, to me, that's, there isn't really anything that is more important than making sure we don't go to war. I mean, there's not, everything else kind of just pales in comparison as far as the news goes. I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on. You've got other outlets to read that stuff. I really thought that was something important. So the Senate's going to begin hearings on it, or whatever you want to call them, sometime this week, and then we should, I would imagine, have an answer by the end of the week. But don't let that make you complacent. Make sure you're calling your senators and your representatives and letting them know that you don't support military action in Syria. Got to let them know this is a civil war. This has nothing to do with the United States. There's no reason that we need to be over there. We've been at war now for going on a good 15 years now, probably longer than that. I'm just obviously longer than that, but we've been in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're spreading our troops. We're wearing our troops out. We do not need to have American troops over in another foreign country fighting somebody else's war. On top of that, and this isn't really much of a reason not to go to war, but when you've got countries like Russia and China, two of the other most powerful countries in the world saying back off, you probably want to take that advice, because besides everything else, that we just don't belong over there. Like I said, it's a civil war. It's none of our business. But with the potential of starting World War III by going over there and attacking them, it's just not worth it. I don't think it is. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm not quite ready to play that other song. Like I said, we're going to have Porter Davis on later on. We're going to talk about smart meters. That'll be here in probably about 10 minutes, right around 6:30. We will probably take some calls a little later on. Really, there isn't much going on, or not a real heavy show planned today, because it is a holiday weekend, and it's better that you spend time with family and whatnot than listening to my boring ass. Let's see, what else can we go over? Not that it's really all that important, but college football season did begin yesterday. So that's something you're interested in. Here in Oklahoma, we had, of course, both big teams playing. OU played, what's the name of that team? Louisiana, of University of Louisiana Monroe. Wasn't really much of a game. I'm not an OU fan, so I didn't follow it really. I just saw the score was 34-0. So obviously it wasn't much of a game. Oklahoma State played Mississippi State. Again, not really a fan of Oklahoma State either, but they won 21-3. To be honest, I'm really not much of a college football fan in general, but I'm not really a big fan of either OU or OSU. I could take or give either one of them, give or take, whatever. Up in the Pacific Northwest, though, in the Pac-12, we had some interesting games. Oregon played Nicholls State. Never really heard of them. That was a 66-3 game. Kind of got slaughtered there. Oregon State actually lost to Eastern Washington, 49-46. I thought that was a bit of a surprise. Washington State, not surprisingly, got beat by Auburn, 31-24. And then the team that of any college team, I guess I could say I give a little bit of a rat's ass about, University of Washington, that's the Huskies. They beat Boise State 38-6. I heard that was a pretty good game. The only other team that I really can say I care about as far as college football goes would probably be Notre Dame, and they beat Temple 28-6. So, just to bulk up some time here and give the results to people who actually might care, go over the first week's AP Top 25 for you. Let's see, Oklahoma is down. They are at 16. Oklahoma State at 13. I'll just go through the whole list. Number 1 is Alabama. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Oregon. Number 4, Stanford. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, South Carolina. Number 7, Texas A&M. Number 8, Clemson. Number 9, Louisville. 10 and 11 were by Florida and Florida State. 12 is LSU. 13, Oklahoma State. 14, Notre Dame. 15, Texas. 16, Oklahoma. 17, Nebraska. No, I've got that wrong. 17, Michigan. 18, Nebraska. 19, Boise State. 20, TCU. 21, UCLA. 22, Northwestern. 23, Wisconsin. 24, USC. And 25 is Oregon State. Of course, like I said, that's just the first week of rankings. And now, as far as the standings, like here, we're part of the Big 12 here in Oklahoma. I had heard earlier, about a month or so ago, that Oklahoma State was primed to be the number 1 team in the Big 12. The standings obviously do not reflect that, although I'm not quite sure why, because there were a lot of teams that were 1-0. I guess he's... All right, folks, sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties here in the studio. Hopefully those have been resolved. So we've got Porter Davis on hold. Porter was a former Oklahoma State legislator. He's also a liberty activist here in the Oklahoma City area, and we're going to go ahead and bring him on. Porter, are you there?
I'm here. How's the sound?
Oh, the sound is fine. I don't know what was going on.
Let me know if I need to get closer. Sometimes I need to, and I don't want to overpower it either.
No, your volume is perfect.
All right.
So we were going to talk. Yeah, so we were going to talk about smart meters, but before we get into that, what did you think of yesterday's turnout to the war protest or anti-war protests?
I think that the anti-war protests are a symptom of an extremely hopeful trend, and that is people waking up to the mainstream media. I've been hashtagging it media whores the last few days. And they're waking up to that because all these videos are out on YouTube with this, what is the Free Syrian Army, which is Al-Qaeda. That's the largest group there. They're the ones committing all the atrocities. I was just listening. Ben Swan just put something out about the real truth about Syria. And if everybody would just listen to that, they would get their head straight on Syria real quick.
Yeah, there definitely doesn't seem to be a whole lot of support, from what I can tell, for this military action.
Well, I think what we're seeing, I don't watch the mainstream news, but I made myself watch Meet the Press today, and I watched, Bryant Williams' show. Somebody else had it earlier this week when Obama was making some announcements about it all. But, what it appears they're going to do right now is they're going to hold the great debate, and they're going to try to talk about all this in 1 week and just try to rush it through. But the problem is that unlike during the Bush years, people have gained great skepticism about the mainstream media when they see all this other stuff on the internet that totally contradicts the official story from the get-go. They've got problems, and so they're going to run all the heavyweights out and try to show this thing and couch it. But what I see is the left-right paradigm is crumbling because of this, and then issues like smart meters that we were going to be talking about, and all the stuff they're putting in the water, and they're putting in the food supply with the GMOs, and they're putting in the air with the aerosols, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and this war is just a manifestation, the one they're talking about in Syria. I'm just looking at a deal right now where there's a quote from somebody, Norman Solomon. It says, "War becomes perpetual peace when it's used as war becomes perpetual when it's used as a rationale for peace." And I have a book, Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace, and this is showing 6 presidents, all their military actions and stuff. So what we have is just the same people running the same thing right now, but people are waking up to it. And so It's a very dangerous time. It's a very exciting time, but the alternative media is coming into its own right now, and that's what slowed things down. And so now we have this deal. We're going to go to Congress, and we all know that Congress is bought and paid for. Yeah. And so, they've got all the information on everybody in there, don't you know? Probably about you and me too, and everybody else. But so this is the whole control apparatus right now that's being talked about, and people are waking up to it. And I don't think Americans want to get another war. We're bankrupt right now. Everybody's realizing the economy is collapsing, Yeah. And we don't want to go to war. We just want peace. We want to bring the troops home and help. If we're going to have them, let's have them here and let's defend America. And let's, while they're here, let's help put them to work for a little bit, helping to rebuild some infrastructure here. Absolutely. And helping with things like sensible border security and, just helping to do what national defense is supposed to be. And They're worn out. And we're creating a bunch of killers, and these troops are committing suicide in record numbers. It's just the American people are sick of it, and that's what I sense everywhere. We were out yesterday. Steve and I were out with about, maybe through the whole day, maybe 100 people. Out on four corners at the busy intersection on Saturday afternoon in Oklahoma City, the Northwest Expressway, and Pennsylvania Avenue. There's big shopping centers right there. It was the hottest day of the year.
It was a hot one.
It got up to probably out where we were by the street, 105, I'm guessing, or more. Yeah. I did come prepared. I came prepared better than most people, but that's based on hard experience, Yeah. So, and there were a bunch of, and so we had a collection of the Peace House, and Nathaniel Batchelder, who I've known for a long time. He's been a long-time anti-war activist and a lot of peace causes and things, and they brought some of their expertise out and, had some great big red and white signs, honk for peace and so forth. So as Dax Eubank said, if you measured the ratio between the numbers of honks and go get them and peace signs we got to the number of middle fingers cast our way, he reckoned it was about 50 of the people that want no more wars to one person saying screw you. So, and when they first started rattling the sabers on this latest time, remember it was just 6 months ago we were ready to go to war with North Korea. They were ready to go to war with us. What in the hell was that about? That was a distraction for something. We need to go back and see what they did during that time. But right now, here they're rattling the sabers, and first poll I saw, and I remember it was a respected poll, Rasmussen or somebody said 9% of the people, that's 9, that's one less than 10, right? 9% of the people support the war in Iraq. And now you're seeing other figures, 40-40 and 40-30, 35. So they're already trying to change the public perception of the American public being persuaded by the talking heads, but people don't believe the media whores anymore.
Yeah, and like you said, people are finally starting to wake up, and we really need to keep the word going out there so we can wake more people up, pull them out of the matrix, so to speak.
Well, I think that's a lot of what's happening. A big part of the matrix in America has been the left-right paradigm.
Yeah,
and that is starting to crumble. I had conversations with people that were, I'm sure they were visibly unnerved to some extent with some of the things I was saying because I was a Republican and they were total dyed-in-the-wool Democrats. And here we were out at this peace rally. And so what we had was, if we wanted to use vernacular, a lot of people would probably use. I don't particularly like it, but what we had was the anti-war left waking up and the anti-war right coming out. The anti-war right's been the biggest faction so far because of the Ron Paul campaign.
Yeah.
So, but the left is finally, they've been subdued mentally and emotionally by Obama. They were conned by Obama just like the conservatives were conned by Bush.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And so we have a meeting ground. Nobody likes to be conned, but you better learn from the lesson.
I think with an incident like this with Syria, among other things, there's a lot of we're starting to find that there is a lot of common ground between the Republicans and the Democrats that they didn't really want to admit before.
Yes, no doubt. Well, you see, one of the things that the parties have taken on, I have sociological training. I was a graduate student in sociology for a couple of years, and so I began to develop that kind of perspective. But people have taken a look at the political parties that have been ingrained. People who take politics seriously, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican, to whatever extent that they have a strong affection for that, it's developed a bit of a religious mindset in them. And so you get those terms like yellow dog Democrat. That's the Democrat that would vote for a yellow dog before they'd vote for a Republican, right? And those are just as strong on the Republican side. And so it takes on cult-like behavior. And among other things, people don't speak ill of their leaders. They have to keep their mouth shut because it's a Republican screwing them instead of a Democrat. But they're doing it for a good reason, to protect us.
Yeah, and it seems like that paradigm is also starting to go away, because I'm seeing a lot of Democrats out there that aren't necessarily so happy about their presidential their president.
Yeah. Well, I think the disaffection is growing, and this war is awakening people because they've already had the narrative cut out from under them by the information age, by the internet, and so all this reaction that had Obama say, "Take a walk and change his mind," and at least it's a chance to go along if he's willing to go alone. Because the alternative media, people, they have more information now. So you have people that really, you are not going to see that publicity given on the mainstream media to the point of view of alternative information. But there's plenty of people that can see both of them, and they know from the mainstream media it doesn't take much on an issue like this to get someone who's still buying into it. You take a look at these YouTube clips or whatever. Most people have the internet now, right? So that's sort of our situation right now. But I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful because there were demonstrations all over the country. But even just little things when you're out on the street, somebody comes by and you see the slogans. It took a long time to get the slogan off that I do. That would be a visible walking billboard. I can get no message, no war. To do it 2 words, 5 letters total, so there it was, big and bold. And so it's an idea that the driving by could look at it and they would say, no war. Well, it's not complicated. And if they saw it, you're right, and they honked for more, and then just made they directed it by their own intention, their mind towards being
Hey, Porter, I don't mean to cut you off there. I'm getting some reports that your voice is getting kind of choppy.
Okay.
So why don't you?
I could try to call it my cell phone if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead and try that. See if we can get a better connection.
If this is better, is it sounding choppy to you right now? I'm on the landline. Does it sound choppy right now?
Yeah, it's getting sounding pretty choppy.
Okay, I'll call you back.
Okay, let's see if we can get a better connection.
Okay.
Now you, Porter?
That's that.
It's a little bit better.
You can also try my cell phone, my earbuds
You're still choppy.
Choppy. I wonder if it's my voice. Maybe it's the way I'm talking. Maybe I can use more resonance.
Well, actually, you're starting to come through a little bit better now.
Okay. Well, I will slow down a little bit. I'm putting a lot of thoughts together about this right now, and I'll pay more attention to the technical end of using my phone for this.
Okay.
I haven't done a radio interview in a while.
Well, maybe it may be the program. This thing has been the program we use to run this has been kind of off and on lately, so it could be partially that.
Well, let's just see how we do, and I'll try to get up close and maybe slow my sentences down a little bit.
All right. Well, my source tells me that you're coming through a little bit better now, so that's good.
All righty.
Okay, so we kind of got off track. You want to repeat some of the last few things that you were saying?
Well, it's interesting. I have not been to I have been to marches, not marches, but I've been to events at the state capitol to protest something, but really nobody was seeing it. So this is a new thing, going to a street corner like this. I mean, when I say street corner, it's Northwest Expressway, which is like a 6-laner, and then Penn, which is a full-fledged 4-lane, heavy traffic location. But people were honking in a very high row show to the people who just looked bewildered or gave us that
didn't understand what was going on.
Up yours look. So I'm quite encouraged about it, and the last thing I was talking about was just the technical parts of the value of doing those demonstrations and helping to raise awareness, because everybody who saw those signs got messages implanted in their minds and about no war, and so it helped to rake up the matrix with those people. So I definitely see the value of doing things like that, and I think we need to do more of it. We've got to get away from our keyboards and start showing up, and that's what we've seen is impressive demonstrations all over the country, and I think that's just what we're going to see, because I've met people, a lot of young people that have awakened in the last year. I met a guy at the rally yesterday where we were protesting. He had awakened about a year ago, and he helped organize an anti-Monsanto rally about 8 weeks ago. So there's just a lot of people coming forward. I've been in the liberty movement really almost 45 years, 44 I guess, coming up here. And I've been off and on in various degrees of intensity, but I've run for office. I've been in the Libertarian Party. I've been an independent. I've been a Republican. I've been a Republican since about 1980. And I've been elected to office, and I've done, referendums and things like that. So I've had a lot of activism in my lifetime, and I've never seen anything like this, where people are just waking up all over the place and really discovering fundamental truths about the way the economy works and by how the world works. And so that's a very encouraging thing to me, and I think we're just going to see lots more and bigger of these protests. I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how outrageous this debate goes, I wouldn't be surprised to see the offices of the congressmen and senators, with people going in and even holding up signs and stuff outside of those, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that showing up like tomorrow, depending on how this debate goes.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so amazing about this, Steve, is there are so many people that are taking independent, creative action about things. People who have developed a sense of fearlessness, and they believe in the ideals the country was founded on. I mean, this country, when you strip it all down, this country was founded on the idea of liberty. This is what I was taught: is they founded this country so we could live in liberty, so we could live in freedom, and we were taught all of the virtues that free people would have when they got to keep the fruits of their labor, and they were free to think and act and produce creatively, and whatever government mechanisms were set up were designed solely to protect people against force and fraud, and you'd have police to, at a bare minimum, just what you needed for people that actually violated the non-aggression principle. And we've gotten so far away from that right now, people don't realize that's what's motivating people in the liberty movement right now. It's a simple return to living according to the golden rule.
Yeah. It's amazing how much more impact the libertarian principles are starting to come more mainstream, so to speak.
Well, it is. I haven't seen one yet, but I expect we will soon see those memes coming out there about. Now, tell me again what it was about Ron Paul's foreign policy you didn't like.
Yeah.
That's a great meme, because that was always people's rub with Ron Paul's was his foreign policy.
I like him except for his foreign policy. Okay, what about it?
Yeah, or he's not charismatic enough. We want somebody who has a foreign policy and is charismatic, like the current candidates and the crops we've had to choose from in the last several candidacies.
Romney, John McCain.
Yeah, well, just look at it. We basically have had two long Bush administrations. The first Bush administration really started after an assassin almost killed Ronald Reagan in the first year of his presidency, in the first 2 or 3 months. That was in 1981, and by the time I was running for the state legislature in 82 and knocking on doors that summer, I had people who were asking me then, what's happened to Reagan? And back then we didn't have the internet, but we had newsletters. Newsletters were what were circulating, weekly newsletters with all the news that you don't see in the mainstream media. So it was a very exciting time. Well, I would tell people who had asked me that question, what had happened to Reagan, I said, just based on what I'd learned reading in some of those newsletters, said, imagine there's been a silent, invisible coup in the White House. And that's really, and I had a high-placed person in the Reagan administration tell me, he left after 3 or 4 years, he said what he saw going on in the vice presidential office just made him sick. And, so you had that long run into the first Bush presidency, and then you had Clinton, who was just, sort of cleared the palate for everyone. And then you got the next one, and I said when Obama was elected, I told people immediately, I said, look, he'll be Bush on steroids. And look at it. Everything is just, if you just took the trends under Bush and plotted them, you would just see graphs going up and all of the characteristics and we don't want to see about our country.
Yeah,
they're either going way up or going way down. Police state way up, economy way down.
Exactly.
Stuff like that, and deficit exploding. So it's but what's interesting? I've been reading the half-past human reports that Cliff High puts out, and in the last one he put out, it's very interesting stuff he does. It's predictive linguistics based on his web bots. He was writing that, of course, a theme he's had, and I think he's been right, but he said there's, what they've picked up is that in this fall time, in the winter, you're just going to have increasing exposure of the way the world really works, and people are going to be waking up to it, and the people who are doing stuff in the shadows when they're exposed, they're going to be panicking. Yeah. So this is where we are right now.
Yeah,
I find it quite fascinating and exciting, and as Bill Hicks said, we need to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, we're living in an interesting time. I had a couple of weeks ago, I had R.J. Harris on the show. What are your thoughts of the libertarian movement trying to worm its way into the Democratic Party?
Why not? Why not?
That's what I've been.
The libertarian movement, it's a movement for liberty. It's really quite simple. Here's what I think about this a lot, and and once people grasp that liberty is about self-responsibility on one hand, okay? Everybody should be self-responsible. We need to be raised so we're self-responsible beings, so we can contribute to society and be able to truly contribute and love and do all of those things. You can't do that when you're not self-responsible. That's that's irresponsible, right?
Right.
You know,
Right.
somebody else is having to take care of you. So everybody's got to be responsible. That means we figure out what mechanisms do we do consistent with liberty principles with people that are just somehow damaged and can't be responsible. You know, I don't know. But it doesn't have to be the way we do it right now, which doesn't work at all. And then the other thing is we need to live by the non-aggression principle, which is basically the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I was just finished a book by C.S. Lewis, and it's the case for Christianity, and he just made the very, very basic case that regardless of what we think, most everybody universally, he asserts, it may not be quite that wide, but the vast majority of people have an inner compass of what's right and what's wrong, even if they're violating it. And it always sort of gets down to the golden rule, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so, you know, my theory is everything's collapsing right now. We have a lot of bad indicators about the economy. Awareness is going up. That's the positive. And I need to keep looking at that. People are waking up, and people are making active motions to transform to the new societies. That's what we have. The old system doesn't work. It's proved it doesn't work. It was predicted it wouldn't work. It was predicted it would turn into this. And as it's crumbling, you've got all the power centers that have been built up. You know, they're scrambling to keep their positions in the roost. But unless they've got places to go in outer space or the underground bunkers, which supposedly there are, I know there have to be some, but you know, there's not much place to go. And if the others are, you know, so we got to get this thing worked out. And we have a lot of problems. We're doing a lot of damage to the planet right now. I mean, Fukushima, it's been 29 months, and that water's boiling, those reactors are melting down, and nobody's talking about it. You know, the whole Pacific's getting polluted with radiation. Plus, you know, we were going to talk tonight about smart meters, weren't we? I'm sure
we'll get to that. We will get to that.
But it's all part of the same thing. I mean, we're under a full assault. You know, as I've been studying this thing, we talked about doing smart meters, and I've just been sort of paying attention in the back of my mind to, are cell phones dangerous? That was sort of the main one. And so I'd gotten to the place where the last 3 or 4 years I would not talk on a cell phone with the cell phone to my head except on the rarest of occasions, using the speaker, using earbuds and things like that. But for the most part, I was not paying a lot of attention to things. But, I just had things brought to my attention increasingly over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, smart meters are out there. I'm thinking, I'm sure those are bad too. You know, I can't pay attention to everything. But I've been aware that they're out there, and there were issues with privacy, and there were issues with health. And lo and behold, one day I found one in my house. I thought, oh, crap, I've got one of those. But I was working on other things. But my family physician did a lecture about in May or June this year on radio frequencies and microwave radiation, RFEW as he calls it. It's all this stuff about electromagnetism and the various electronic devices that we're using all over the world in so many ways. And we're under a radiation assault, a microwave assault, a radio wave assault like human beings have not had in our stage of whatever evolution we're at. I mean, this has all come out in the last, with radar especially in World War II and before that. But after that, then you had FM radio. You even had the electrification of rural America. All of these things have had impacts that have increased all kinds of these debilitating diseases that people are dying from now. Instead of dying from diseases at early ages like dysentery and diphtheria and infections and things like that, we've learned how to take care of that. But as we get older, we're getting all of these cancers and heart diseases and thyroid conditions and you name it. And this gets into the psychological problems like depression and sleeplessness. And, I mean, and so I've had to learn about all of this. It's like science was not my specialty in high school, physics particularly. So I've had to learn about all of this. And I even had a radio station for 5 years back in the 90s, an FM radio station. But I never really learned about it. I just, the frequencies, I I've got my frequency, I'm going to send a signal to it, and now I'm going to go run a radio station. But I'm learning about all of this, and we are electrical beings at our basis. We're conglomerations of energy beneath the atoms and you've got the skin and the flesh and the bones, and you go down into the molecules and the atoms and the electrons and the protons and farther than that, we're just energetic beings. And we're taking these microwaves and just shooting them at rapid speeds with various degrees of intensity and oscillation, which is what do they call it? The magnitude of the wave. Whatever the band is, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. I'm having to learn all these terms, and we're just having our bodies shot through with all of these things, and it's creating all of these diseases we have. So I ended up, after even speaking to the Corporation Commission against them about 3 weeks ago, I had a guy come up to my house with his meter, and he just started metering around, and just we have it all over the place. It's all over the city, and it's just a huge assault. and they know it's doing this. It's not like they don't know. The standards that are set up by the Federal Communications Commission is who regulates the microwaves, and the only standard of safety they use is based upon whether or not these various devices can heat a thermometer stuck in a dummy's head. It's all about thermal radiation. Does it heat a thermometer measured in a dummy's head? And all of this stuff you can't see, and it's non-thermal microwave energy from all the devices we have, the Wi-Fi, the cordless phones, the cell phones, the radio towers, the various other civil frequencies that are around. We're just television. Everything went digital, so we're just being bombarded with all these things that are really hurting our health.
Yeah, it's really.
And they know it's doing it. They know it's doing it. That's just let that one sink in just a little bit. It's not just greedy corporations. They know that it's destroying our health. And there are other sections of the world that won't let Wi-Fi in schools. We're putting it in all our schools. We've got Wi-Fi in our Starbucks. We've got it in our businesses. I've taken my Wi-Fi out. I've unplugged my cordless phones. I've put my cell phone away from me at night and put it in airplane mode. Probably should just turn it off is what I should do. I'm on a landline right now.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So, and I've there's a great website out there called StopTheCrime.net. StopTheCrime.net. Deborah Tavares. It is really radical because she goes into a lot of source documents like the silent weapons for a quiet war, or silent weapons for quiet wars. And that's when you start looking at all this pollution, this toxicity we live in with the electromagnetic stuff, the stuff they're putting in the water in the municipal water supplies, the fluoride, the chlorine. They're finding traces of these antidepressants. I thought it was maybe because they're putting the antidepressants, flushing them down the toilet and stuff, but who knows? Then you got the aerosols in the sky that take a blue sky and make it cloudy in a couple hours. It's an interesting time we're living in. It really is.
And we've actually got Barbara on the line that wants to ask you a question. So let me bring her on.
Sure.
Barbara, you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Well, thanks for calling in.
Hi, Barbara.
Fine. And
hi, Porter. How's it going?
Doing great.
Good. Good. Hey, up here in Alaska, we do think of Fukushima. Believe me.
Oh
we
gosh.
Talk about it all the time. But
are you my Facebook friend?
I am.
All right.
My question before you started getting into the the crime of electronics and that type of thing, my question was, do you see any future possibility or any viability at all if we were to create an entirely third party, not independent, not libertarian, nothing that's been established before, but anything that can combat or even compete or change this two-party system?
Yes, I do. And it's not exactly a political party, but I happen to be working on just such a project. The broad name, I had the seed of it at goldstateinitiative.com. I think that's it. I've been working on this idea for several years, Gold State Initiative, and it's based. And I was thinking about it after the first Ron Paul campaign, and thinking about what can we do, and maybe it was also during the last one I started really putting it down and thinking about it, and I was thinking about, well, maybe I should just move to New Hampshire. I thought, well, why do I have to move to New Hampshire? We have all these liberty movement people here. So I quickly went to the idea, just in a nutshell, that if the liberty movement would set as its goal for every state to make its state a free state, and let that be the unifying vision and not any particular candidate, we would, if we had done that, for instance, like 6 years ago, which hadn't figured that out yet, but if we had, we would not have lost so much momentum after the Ron Paul campaign shut down. But since the Ron Paul campaign shut down, there's people doing stuff here, there, and yon, but we aren't focused like we were before. And the logical place for us to focus is at the state level. Now, what I'm looking at doing, and so the Gold State Initiative idea is basically, I wrote it around Oklahoma, but I would want to challenge Alaska. I want to challenge Texas. I want to challenge the liberty movement there to beat us in Oklahoma to making your state a free state. But so I'm working to get the resources together right now. What I want to do is put it together. My thought has been to put it together in Oklahoma, but set up an infrastructure. And there's other ways to do it, but set up an infrastructure. However we do it, it's like a community Wikipedia kind of project. So we start thinking, how do we make our states free states? And in Oklahoma, I've got the idea of calling it Oklahoma 2.0, because we just celebrated our 100th anniversary as a state just a few years ago, and of course you guys are a lot newer than that, my lifetime. Imagine if you did an Alaska 2.0 and you said, now look at what all we've learned since we've been a state. I look at it like looking at a beautiful piece of real estate that's just had a structure built on it a long time ago that's been added to, not out of basic function and design, but out of corruption, and wasn't put together very well and hasn't been maintained very well, and it's a sprawling mess. That's what I see Oklahoma state government is. But look at it and say, what have we learned? What functions do we now think the government should do? And enlist the people in the state to start thinking about it and develop a plan. And there may be great parts of the state that are already in the right place, but others just need to say, this whole system needs to be replaced. It could be the Child Protective Services or whatever. Maybe a whole new way of thinking about all that because of all of the criminal activity you read about going on in those things. But the idea is put together a plan, reduce the plan to a platform publicize both of them and start recruiting candidates to the platform. And my thought is encourage them to run as Republicans or Democrats or independents or whatever they think will be the best way to get themselves elected. So I know practically speaking in Oklahoma, most of the people that will do that will probably be Republicans. But R.J. Harris could be doing the same thing, running for governor as a Democrat. So it's an interesting idea.
This is the problem we have. And, I mean, we have organized in Alaska once we came back from Tampa. Actually, I had the vision before I went to Tampa, and I came up with Accountability Alliance Alaska, and just saying, hey, from what I've learned, just people, I don't care what political persuasion you think you are or you are, you need to just start educating yourself and getting involved and start asking questions. Just get involved and
exactly
start holding people accountable. Well, that's fine. And when I did this, I had 1,000 business cards made up, and I would just leave them in coffee shops and grocery stores. And whenever I talk to people, I would just, here's a card. And it doesn't have a website, and it doesn't have a phone number, it doesn't have a place to sign up. It's just, here, this is yours, now you're accountable. So it's kind of on that basis, like, here you go. And I guess if you sit in a dentist's office and look at this card back and forth, you finally figure out, yeah, I am the government. Because it says, Mr. Citizens, you're the government. Yeah, we are the people. We have got to do something. So start doing this. I don't care. And that was fine, and I sent those all over the state. That was great. But it has to be more than that. And so now the gal that I worked a lot with when we did go to Tampa to get that nomination, we worked really hard on that. And, she's got a great mind on how to really administrate and organize from the bottom. And so her focus right now is called Build a Base. We have got to get a base of people, and we've got to get one place where we come so we can get the information out, so we can say, yes, we need to go on that issue or whatever issue it is. But it is trying to tell people what you just said previously. You said to find these people and have them run for office under Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever they think. Well, that's the problem that I'm having is when you talk to people about this, they just look at you and say, no, politics is not the answer. I don't care about what political party. And then I'm saying, yeah, but politics runs your life. You tell me one, you can't even get in your car and drive into town, and if you get stopped for some reason, there's some statutes that you broke or something, that all begins with getting people in office, the legislators who write the law. You have to understand, you can't look at that big picture. So I think that even this whole atmosphere that you have been talking about, that people, it's all been designed so that we don't discuss these things, so that we do hate politics, so that we don't get involved, and so
You're
that
right.
we don't believe we can do anything at the bottom. So to just, to beat the streets and get out there and just shake a hand and look at someone and go, this place is such a mess. Don't you think so? Yep, it is. You have that talking point, that common denominator with everybody you come into contact anymore. Nobody trusts the government anymore.
Now they're losing their trust in the mainstream media. And so that, it's a potent combination. And when I look at it, I kept having people, I've been posting a lot for a couple of years on Facebook. The conversation is there. But I've had people saying, well, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? Nobody has a plan. And I thought, I just thought about the simple biblical admonition in Proverbs, it was in Proverbs, I think, without a vision, the people perish. And so it's our task begins, I think, with implanting a vision in people's minds of what could be to help them begin to work their way out of this. They can see the mess, But I think for them to truly be unleashed, as I was telling Steve earlier, we need to get them to begin to think about a free society where people live with self-responsibility and according to the golden rule. They want to understand. We have to help them understand why things are so screwed up, but at the same time we do that partly by showing them where we need to go and help them to do that. But, I fully agree with what you're saying about build a base, because that's where it is. And we need to take the precincts, which in Oklahoma have just been totally moribund, and I imagine they are everywhere all over the nation, and start going out and meeting our neighbors. Let's meet our neighbors. Let's see who they are. Let's get together and see who's interested in actually being a precinct leader. It'd be great to have 15 or 20 precinct leaders that are willing to organize a 600 or 700 person precinct. But we could have weekly or monthly meetings of interest. It doesn't have to be political. It could just be somebody coming in to talk about, in this day and age, how are we going to help each other? How are we going to get along if the power goes out and stays out for quite some time? There's all kinds of things being floated as reasons that could happen. What are we going to do if there's riots? How are we going to have neighborhood and precinct security and things like that? So there's a lot of things that I think are practical, just like when our parents and grandparents went through the Great Depression, they were inconvenienced a whole lot. And they had to do things to get away from flying dust in the Dust Bowl and go where jobs were and leave where they weren't and all kinds of things. And they had to make do with stuff without any money. This is the last time they collapsed the economy on us. And we're going to have to do the same thing. And if we're realistic, we'll see that happening. And we need to get busy right now, because those who are going to prevail and come to the other side of all of this mess with liberty are going to be those that are out there doing the real community organizing. Luckily, community organizing is really part and parcel of what Jesus Christ did. I mean, he brought people together. That's why the establishment didn't like him. He brought them together, and they started helping each other and working together and, loving their neighbor and living by the golden rule. And he was setting in a new kind of government. It was self-government and people living with each other. And so I think we're going to find a fertile base out here to go beyond the mere politics. If we're just organizing, Barbara, we want to be political so we can get our people elected to office. If we set our goal just political and not look beyond to the needs of the people, going even to the spiritual, if you will, I mean, just where people need to be seen as people and loved on and talked to. I notice when I walk around in stores, everybody that walks around is a stranger, and everybody's looking at everybody else, and nobody's looking at anybody else when you look at them.
Yeah, I think you and I are both old enough. We were raised in that era where, if you had eye contact with anyone, you'd always say, "Oh, hello, how are you?" Or, we always talked in the store to people, or we were polite and we opened the door. And I even taught my little boys, open the door for older people. They knew those types of things. But that is gone, and most of that is, this electronic age, for one. But getting back to what you were saying about being locally involved, my next question to you was, do you see it important that we try to recruit rather than just find who's already ready? Because I feel like there are already people out there that are just wanting to know what to do.
Yes.
And they're eager to do.
I think we need to recruit. I think we need to recruit. Is that the question? And I'll be happy to expound on that if you like.
Well, and it kind of goes into, because this verse was coming back to me, many are called and few are chosen. It's not like anybody's choosing them so much, but when to walk in this call of liberty against the society, like you were saying, the things that are out there. We've all been renamed as terrorists. We know that. And the list goes on and on. 72 pinpointed actual
Yeah, that includes everybody we know. I think it's growing thin. Everybody's going to reach this moment, I think, and it could be the WTF moment where people are just saying, okay, well, here we are. And I don't know. We're I've made analogies to German history in the 30s a number of times, and I'm not sure where we are. We're not the same thing, but those same forces are afoot in this society right now, and they've shown us that they're listening. They're listening to this, and they know who we are. They've got programs where they're tracking everything. That's what all those databases are for, if they can figure out how to do it all.
But it's designed to control us and not spread information. From what I'm thinking, though, when people start hearing that, they're going, oh, well, we got to be careful what we post on Facebook because, and it's like, it is so far past that. You can't. I mean, in the last year, from what I have learned through my small amount of work that I've done with the Ron Paul exchange, the people who I've worked with and continue to work with, when it finally got down to the very last bit of all of it, and you see the ones that you thought were going to come along with you and the ones that you thought were going to stand, and all of a sudden the vote goes the other way, and you go, what? I thought they were true blue. What in the world? So
you had a vote where that happened?
Well, I'm talking about when you get to a point where you're voting on issues or you're coming up with your idea or your plan, and you thought that someone was going to go with your plan, and they ended up not. But I would not have known that about that person were it not for the amount of work we had to do on the venture that we were involved with. I mean, it took me 8 or 9 months to find out. Or, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying with the question of recruiting versus let's go with what we have now, because to me, the people that have the intestinal fortitude, or seem to, are the ones that are even standing now and speaking out like the voice crying in the wilderness.
Well, here's the way I see it, Barbara. I mean, we have to do both of those. We have to go with the people we have right now, and the question is, what do we have them do? And one of the things we've got to do is recruit. And like in Oklahoma County, we have a very active, we have a lot of Liberty people in the Oklahoma County Republican Party. And people, that party is getting energized, and we're working on a systematic plan to start locating the voters and the people in all of the precincts. And by doing that, what I see we need to do is to look at it and find those people that want to help on this project. But the project is to actually go out and identify everybody that lives in our precincts and make some kind of contact with them that has a way to let them know, asking them questions or whatever to see if they're interested in what you want to be talking about, and start holding some community meetings. There's all kinds of ways to do this, but for sure we have to, it's like sifting. It's like network marketing in a sense. We have a goal. The goal is to make the state a free state. So how are we going to do it? And you just start putting it together. We need to build a network. That's what a base is. And in network marketing, the few times I tried it, you think, you have to pick up 19 white stones to get the black stone, or, well, I guess you'd know what color they are. But, that principle, you've got to just sift through until you find the person that's right. Yeah. But I think we have... But we can use our technology and do it really quickly, I think, because we have access to all the voter lists right off the bat. You can get those through almost any election board. You can always mail out a postcard if you need to. We're having a precinct meeting to talk about X, Y, and Z, to talk about smart meters and chemicals in the water and GMOs. We're going to have people here talking about those things, and if you're interested, come, and we have this convenient place, and we're going to have some refreshments, and it's free, and we're just doing this as a community service, and it's not even partisan. Even if our Republicans do that project, my recommendation is don't make it partisan. Open it up to anybody that wants to come in, because you're providing information.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, you're providing information, and so you start finding, you go out and you hit the whole notice with a postcard, and then you figure out ways. Lots of times you can get telephone numbers real quick, and you can prioritize them. You go after the ones who vote first. With those, you just want to give them better information, and they're all waking up right now. And so it really gets down to basic campaign management, network marketing, and so forth. But to do it, we need the goal. That's the key thing. I learned this back when I was in the radio business. We have the National Cowboy Hall of Fame here. They changed the name now, but when I had the station, the director of development had Terry and me, my wife and me, over for lunch. We had an FM radio station. He showed us this plan for this bodacious plan they had to build a new event center and redo all this thing, and it was like $30 million, and that was a lot of money back in the early 90s. And it was breathtaking in its scope. Wow. And I wanted to help out immediately. Of course, it was easy. I had a lot of airtime back then that I was not selling, so it was easy to help them out. We got to go to all the events, but he told me, he said, it's a lot easier to sell a big vision than it is a vision, trying to raise money to fix the roof. But if you want to, and that's what I see we need, and I think the big, bold vision is to make our states free states, and just come up with that plan. And I want to set up a database where everybody that's working on decriminalization, everybody's working on the prison system, everybody's working on that has an idea about highways and stuff like that. They have ideas about how do we fix this protective services system and the schools. Everyone out there has their own area that they have an interest in. And if nothing else, we have people that are in colleges and professorships, and we can go to them and say, would you be interested in showing your graduate students or your senior students here when they're writing a paper, here's information we'd like to know. And if anybody, see if this would meet your course requirements, they could write an article on it, and we'd publish it in the database if we liked it. And, there's all kinds of ways to do it. And once it goes into the Alaska base, we in Oklahoma have a copy of it, and we can say, that's a great idea. Well, let's tweak it for Oklahoma. And pretty soon, these ideas are going back and forth like crazy. If we do that, the whole idea is we're thinking globally, but we have to act locally. And the fertile ground is the precincts. Now, we know that the Obama forces, they're community organizers. They're all over the country showing all these dependents how to get their benefits. It's the Cloward Piven strategy.
That's true. Yep, I just read all that, too. So, yeah. All right, I appreciate it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm open to a bigger, bolder vision, but I think if we had a friendly competition to see whether Oklahoma or Alaska becomes the freest state, I think we'd be hard-pressed the way I look at Alaska. But you guys don't have as much to overcome. Think of the states that have 200 years of state government in there. That's really entrenched.
But our state is more federally owned than anybody else's.
Oh, well, we need to fix that. You've got that great harbor way up there, too, don't you?
Well, but see, this friend of mine that has the idea for the Build-A-Base, and she's really gung-ho, she lived in what's called an unorganized borough. Now, up here in Alaska, we don't have counties. We have boroughs. And the borough she lives in is a free borough. So what she has on a small scale is what you're talking about, a free state. And she helps to educate the other boroughs who have these issues, the people within their other boroughs, how to become unorganized so that they can become a free, a no-borough, it's called a no-borough issue. But anyway,
and it's called a free borough. So, and what's her status again?
I live in the Kenai Peninsula borough, and she lives in up in Delta Junction where there is not a borough. So the people who live in Delta Junction that are not in a borough actually own their land. They do not pay taxes on that. And the town of St. Petersburg just recently in Alaska went through this issue, and they ended up losing the fight. And so now they are an organized borough. So Kenai Peninsula Borough, where I live, is organized. Where my friend lives is unorganized. And now Nenana, which is another town, is also coming up with that issue. They're trying to fight for that. And so
I've been in Nenana.
And so we're learning more about it. But if it were not for her to take the ball and say, hey, did you know you can be unorganized? And it's according to the Alaska statutes. You know, we had a teleconference. We have each Sunday night we hold a statewide teleconference in Alaska, bringing up every issue for the public to get on and learn about and become educated. So anybody can call in and listen, and we have different topics. Well, one week we had these speakers on unorganizing your borough. And so that's, this is how I guess we're beginning our education of getting the people on that listen in and become educated. And we have the Libertarian, the president or the chair of the Libertarian Party on there, and the Independent Party is represented there, Republicans, non-affiliated, and everybody gets on this statewide teleconference, and we all talk about what we need to be educated about. But from there, then we take it locally, and that's what Pam does is now she's running for school board in that. And she said she finally went to one school board meeting. She said, I could not believe how many people did not even know what Common Core was. It just amazed her. But she's running for a seat now. And so, see, that will be the beginning. That's exactly what you're talking about, is getting people on the local level to run for these positions. And since we've come back since we came back to Tampa, it was such a funny thing.
Think about this, Barbara. Think of the power if you guys came up with a 10 or 20-point platform. You put your best minds together and went, and, I want to go to the think tanks like the Independent Institute and places like that, and you come up with a platform and you announce it after the first, you announce you're doing it, and then you announce the platform after the first of the year, and you start having people go to the Rotary meetings and Kiwanis meetings and Republican women and Democrat women and all that kind of stuff. Say, here's our plan to revitalize Alaska. It's time for us to really make some changes that are going to help Alaskans out a lot more. And imagine, this is what I'd like to see in Oklahoma. And you say, here's our plan to do this. Here's what we put together, and we're out looking for candidates. And that's part of, we're telling you the story. That's why we're here. There may be some people here in this Rotary Club that have thought at one time or another that would like to run for office. If what we're saying makes sense to you, talk to us, and we'll show you how to make it easy to run for the state legislature. We're hoping to have a candidate for every house or for every open seat in the state legislature this next year and put them all on basically the same platform. We're going to provide campaign services to make it real easy for you to do it. We've made a deal with people that do political software. We can show you how to get the databases, your local party, et cetera, and so on. Here's even how we've got a deal on making brochures. You can take it all the way to that level. So all they need to do is think, do I want to run? And you've taken away all the reasons. If they decide yes, in their decision making, you've taken away many reasons on why they wouldn't do it. Basically, among other things, I don't know what to do. I'm not quite sure what to say. But here they sign on to a plan, basically. And imagine if you have these people all knocking on doors, feet on the ground for the state legislative seats. Probably some of them are going to have to fly places in Alaska. But imagine doing that, and people are getting these ideas out over and over again. And candidate Jones, he heard about the meeting, he heard about the plan at the Kiwanis meeting, and he decides to run. 3 months later, he speaks to on Kiwanis Jones, and I answer the call, and I'm running, and here's what I'm running on and why. And they get to hear it again. Imagine that happening all over the state. Imagine how the conversation starts to change. You know,
and you're really fading out. You're chopping up, so maybe you moved in your room or something. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
I may not be close enough to my speaker. I'll try that. Is that any better?
You're still breaking up just a little bit.
Still.
I don't know what to do about it. So did I totally lose you?
Not completely, because I'm focused in on listening to you.
I do get excited when I think about this vision. What?
I'm wanting to hear what you're saying, so I'm forcing myself to figure out what it is you're saying.
I get excited about the vision of having a plan to make the state a free state and have candidates simultaneously running all over the state on message to plan to revitalize the state. I'd like to make Oklahoma an economic, a cultural, and spiritual oasis and make the place where people want to come and be in the nation. That's what I'd like to do in Oklahoma, but I want to have friendly competition with the other states for them to do the same thing and put their best foot forward. I think the nation would be better because of it. Is that somewhat clear?
Yes,
I was
and
you're still cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Well, that's about the best I think I can do. So I can try calling in on my cell phone.
Well, if it's
Barbara, I like
encouragement
hearing
to
what
you.
you guys are doing in Alaska. That what you're doing in Alaska is something we need to do.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the Free State Project, and I know a little bit about that. But it's, as you read more about things like that, you got to wonder, well, why can't we implement stuff like that in Oklahoma?
Exactly. But
and so
that's really the thought. That was my thought process, Steve.
Yeah,
I thought we can do that here, and nobody has to move.
Right.
The Free State Project is a great effort, and it's got a lot of people thinking. But I think there's still 6,000 or 7,000 people away from getting commitments to pick up and move to New Hampshire once they've reached their goal of 20,000. Well, who knows how long that might be.
Well, yeah.
But even so, what about Oklahoma? I don't want to move to New Hampshire. I want to do it in Oklahoma.
Yeah. So, you've got these people that they've got some really good intentions as to what they want to do in their state and try to get people to come there. But why can't those activist people get involved where they're already at?
Exactly. Just like Barbara's doing, just like you're doing, Steve, just like I've done. I think we can do that.
If it's any consolation to you, Porter, I did speak with. I actually wintered in Colorado this year. Got out of Alaska,
Really?
but it was kind of fun. I met up with an old family I hadn't seen in a long time, and spoke with the mother and father over pizza. And we sat for quite a while, and he just finally said, he goes, you know what? He goes, I'm getting out of this state. I'm moving to Oklahoma. Those people have it together there.
Really?
And so, yeah, he was really, he had a daughter that was living in Canada and a daughter that was living in Oklahoma, and he is so impressed. And he's really tired of the blue state of Colorado. So he wanted to leave, and they've been there for, as long as we had moved there. We had lived there for 17. Well, I'd lived there for 30 years, but in that particular town, like 14 or 17 years, I don't even remember anymore. But it surprised me that he was going to pick up his whole family and just leave and go to Oklahoma, because he thought that was the land of enchantment. So.
Well, that is interesting.
There's a lot of work to be done here.
I think Oklahoma is destined for great things. I really do. I've felt that for a long time, and it's we've got to make a lot of improvements, but there's a lot of good things going for it. So that is interesting. But hey, all the states have great things going for them. These governments just screw them up.
Yeah, there you go. It's true. It's true. Well, thanks. I'll get off now and let you guys finish your program. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey, good talking with you, Barbara.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'll plug you in somehow, and I'll invite you to the teleconference, the statewide teleconference. You guys.
You sent me some. Usually by the time I get to Sunday night, I want some respite for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, we had a steering team committee meeting, and we decided we better change the day because it doesn't seem like Sunday night is not as easy to get people on. I don't know. We have to come up with a better day. But
I've gotten really jealous of my Sundays. I really have. I just, you've got to take time to disconnect and rejuvenate, and that was God's plan, and I think it makes sense. It's just like getting enough rest. It's there's always more than we can do. That's the frustrating thing to me about what I see that needs to be done is that, and I'm sure you feel the same thing, you see so much that can be done, and there's so many problems that are out there. For me, the question is, what can we do to start solving these problems the quickest? Because, I'd like to make great inroads on that while I still have productive capacity. And, we've got to transition to something, and it's either going to be to tyranny or freedom. We may go through a more or less long period of barbarism in between and breakdown, but hopefully we can let freedom win out. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, and the hope, though, rests in my children. I mean, I have a daughter that's turned 20, and she's got as much savvy. I mean, she stayed home with me. I homeschooled her, and we had home businesses, and we would put on lectures and listen while we're sewing. At the same time we're creating an inventory so we can make some money. We're also being educated. So she knows just as much as I do. Now she has to learn how to get out there and know how to make this plan work and what it's going to take for the next generation, because that's where it's going to have to stand. If the next generation does not have the savvy, along with the intestinal fortitude to continue on, we're really sunk. We're going to have to look at a plan that requires 30 to 40 years for a certain type of breakthrough at one point, because not only we might have what our parents told us about, the Depression, and lived through all those stories, but we're going to be gone, and these children not only have to fight this current horrible world we live in, but they have to hang on to the stories and the memories of what we've been passing about the past generations and try to make that be a part of the future, because it has changed so quickly in the last 15 years. It's just become almost like a sci-fi movie to me, but
it is. I've told my wife that. I told her that this week. I just said, I feel like I'm living in a sci-fi terror movie. There's so much
and
of
my
this.
daughter, she's been out on her own for a year and a half, 2 years now, or a year and a half, and she just said, man, I've lived such a sheltered life, and she's come full scale now to where she tells people, I am so glad that I got to live a normal thinking life, because it didn't take long once I got out here. Just things that, when you don't put your child into the culture of the society, they really do maintain a certain type of innocence and a growth in their maturity that's a little more along the old-fashioned lines, to where by the time you're 12 or 13 to be bar mitzvah, you were a man,
They become old-fashioned individuals, and what's been stamped out in the government.
People tell her all the time. They say, you're an old soul with a young girl's body. But my daughter's told all the time that she is an old soul. She's an old-fashioned person, but in a young girl's body.
Yeah.
So it's, that type of, and that's because I had the liberty and freedom to home educate my child. Think about that.
Right. That's
you
right.
Know,
and the battle ultimately comes down to individualism versus collectivism. And
yep.
Well, it can be below that, it's good versus evil, because collectivism is evil as far as human beings are concerned, because we're not meant to live as people that are not individual souls. We're supposed to live as individual souls within community, not the other way around.
And, it's a silly topic of conversation, but I did say this to this one gal. I said, well, think about it. When you were born, were you born as an individual, or did you come out with as a litter? Were you a number in a litter? And she started laughing. I said, well, it's true. You're born as an individual. You're not born in a litter of brothers and sisters. You're by yourself. So,
who does a lot of good writing on that is John Rappaport. Have you read John?
Who?
John Rappaport.
No.
He's at nomorefakenews.com. Nomorefakenews.com. He's got
I got it.
He has some of the best stuff out there about breaking the matrix. It's really good. And writing about the individual, and he's just all over exposing how they run the mainstream media against us. It's really amazing stuff. He has a newsletter list you want to get on too, but go read 4 or 5 of his articles and you'll see what I mean. But it fits in with what you're saying. NoMoreFakeNews.com. John Rappaport, Rappoport. John is Jon, by the way. Jon.
Okay.
And he's a very interesting writer. But what you've done, and here's one of the things that I don't understand is why the homeschoolers seem to be so politically unorganized and ineffective.
I do have sort of an answer for that. One of the main hubs, one of the leading national sources that homeschools, and this is some of the teachings that I, ascribe to, basically tell people politics is not the answer. And the vision, there's a book put out called The Second Mayflower by a man called Kevin Swanson in Colorado, and their vision is not so much to be politically active, but to build a good, strong society of people with morals again. I remember listening to him, and he was saying, boy, if it takes being a weirdo and dressing weird, I guess I'm going to have to do it, because it's important that we completely separate and get different from this culture and this society, because this is not the answer for the future. And he has a program called Visions. I think it's Visions. Generations with Visions. And a lot of the homeschoolers across the nation don't feel that politics is it. And I don't know. That's the flavor I get at most of the conferences and statewide conferences that are held.
It almost sounds, what they're saying is correct, but it's only part of the truth. The answer is helping to build that new culture. Part of it is you got to take care of business. And the fact is that the political structure is making it difficult for them to build that new culture if they want to live in freedom. And so we've got to get some. It's not an either-or proposition. So
I guess they're saying for the vast numbers, there's an organization called Generation Joshua that's out of Homeschool Legal Defense. And my daughter went to one of their camps. It's geared toward teaching you, how to run a campaign, be in politics, how to, just basically do that. Anyway, she flew down there and was a part of that. And she just said, Mom, she goes, I can't believe they're all tools. There's like maybe 2 of us here that even know what's really going on. She said, I can't believe it. I thought that it was going to be really, to where we all were thinking the same like we do at our house. But she got down there and she realized that, you know, of the number of the kids that were there, 2 of them out of the 75 really knew what was going on. But of course, you know, maybe that's because she was raised in a home where, you know, underground media and all the truth, we're not into the establishment part of things.
Well,
so, but she said basically,
it's
you know,
interesting. Somehow the enemy has conned the homeschool movement into not exerting any political muscle. I mean, think about it. They've been neutralized, whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally. The homeschool movement has been neutralized then because, you know, we know they hate homeschooling. The government does, and it's just a matter of time before they're going to want to. They're already going in and taking kids away from their parents that are homeschooling, and you know,
sure, and that's been going on. I mean, when I started homeschooling in the 80s, and the big question back then was, oh, are you really going to be able to educate your children as well as they're getting educated?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that pretty much proved itself. And then it became, oh, well, I don't know if your children are socially adept. Can they really get along with other kids? You know, and then, well, we blew the cover off of that one. Now it's going to have to be, I really feel like the next wave is going to be, do your children really have the truth embedded in them to where they can walk it and walk the talk in this type of a society now? Because that's what I'm seeing. My daughter just turned 20, and she just said, it is amazing how many people do not know anything that's going on, Mom. She said, they could even care less.
And these are homeschoolers.
Well, out in the world now.
Or she's just talking about the general Joe Blow out there that consumes
now
mainstream media.
But, she went down to that camp when she was 15, you know, and everybody thought she was like about 20, but she wasn't. But it was one of those things. When she went down there, she said, they don't even know the beginnings of what's going on. And I guess they had different speakers come in, and one of the men that spoke there, she said he was right on. And he was, you know, some preacher that had come in, and he really gave the true picture of what it was all about. And but he wasn't as well received as the other establishment people they had come in. And, since she's been out in the world, she said, oh, my gosh, it's amazing to me how people don't know anything. But, you know, that's on a scale of, you know, I guess there are about 72 to 75 kids that went to that camp, and that was 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and 2 out of the 75 really understood what was going on. And even when they tried to approach the leaders and talk about these issues, they were pretty much pushed away. Oh, no, that's conspiracy. That's not even, but we just had some questions. No, we can't talk about that. It's like, you're kidding me. So,
well, it makes sense to me. but you know, I mean, you've got to figure that our enemies, the elites, whatever you want to call them, the reptilians, whoever these guys are, one of the things they've set out to do is to neutralize the homeschool movement as a political force. You know, just like they went out and a lot of these TV evangelists and stuff, you know, they get money, they get paid to in ways that influence their political views. It's not unreasonable to think that if the Rockefeller interests or whoever could take over the medical schools and the whole health profession through intention and take over pulpits and universities, that they couldn't get in and help take over or neutralize the homeschooling movement somehow. I mean, the Ron Paul campaign. I reached the conclusion in March a year ago that the Ron Paul campaign was being sabotaged at the highest levels. That was the only thing I could do. Yeah, that's the only thing I could do. The only way I could make sense of the things I was experiencing and hearing around the country was that it was being sabotaged at the highest levels. And once I thought that, then I thought, oh, well, this all makes sense then. You know, it's just the way.
Yeah, that didn't hit me till about July.
In Oklahoma, the coordinator they appointed, the official coordinator in Oklahoma, they appointed the worst person they possibly could. He was not a Ron Paul supporter. He just was a muckraker. Nobody liked him, and they just ran a total top-down campaign. And everywhere people complained that were here, we had people that didn't go to any more meetings because they didn't like the way he was. And we complained to the Ron Paul campaign, and they didn't do anything for like 3 months until it was, I think, just about time for the state convention, and or maybe the district conventions, and they didn't even fire him. They just suspended him somehow, and never did take any of the Liberty Movement people. And the guy that appointed him had been the coordinator 4 years before, and he knew he didn't talk to anybody that was active in the movement. It was all done that way. And then we had the parking lot convention in Oklahoma where they really screwed us with the rules. And we reconvened in the parking lot and had about a 6-hour convention out in the parking lot. And Arizona had a big convention that weekend. And everybody was learning, as the conventions were rolling along through the spring, people were figuring out what to do to take control of their conventions. We had the Louisiana incident where the guy got beat up and all of this other stuff was happening, but people were learning. And we had our convention, and Arizona had a pretty rough and tumble convention. On Saturday and on Monday morning, Jesse Benton announced Ron Paul was suspending his campaign. And so
I remember where I was. Yep.
Yep, and this is after we were hooping and hollering like we had this huge victory. And we were feeling really good, and I thought, now we're getting somewhere. They announced he had suspended his campaign, and the media, the mainstream media, the media whores, which is my hashtag, media whores, who didn't have the time of day to say anything about Ron Paul, immediately flashed it everywhere that he had quit his campaign. And the official campaign said, no, he didn't quit it. He's just suspending it because blah, 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 blah. And then they told the RNC that they didn't mind, while Ron was still an active candidate, they didn't mind giving the mailing lists and resources to Romney since they figured he was going to win anyway. I mean, it's just crazy. And I started talking to people in various parts of the country and just heard various scenarios of things that looked like the campaign was a money-raising operation. It was a top-down thing. Ron Paul probably didn't know the extent of it, what they were doing, because he just seems to have a weakness trusting some wrong people. That's what I believe. And they collected a lot of names. They did a lot of busy work. In one state, they called people so many.
We got about a minute left in the show.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry. We didn't talk about smart meters much, did we?
No, we didn't get into smart meters too much at all, but we did talk about some really important stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess I did a little data dump here, so here we go.
That's all right. We should definitely have you on again. And Barbara, I do want to thank you for calling in, and we really got some meat out of this out of the show today.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
And Barbara, go to goldstateinitiative.com, and I just had the seed of the idea up there. Tell me what you think about it. goldstateinitiative.com. And Steve, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And good talking with you, Barbara.
All right, thanks for coming on, Porter.
Thank you, Porter.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was that's the end of another episode of Otter Limits Radio here. I hope you folks enjoyed the discussion that we had tonight. For those of you that are still listening to the podcast because the live show is over, we're going to be back next week. Next week, our guest will be let me see my schedule. We're going to have Brittany Pounder from Liberty Juice. And I think that we're also going to have Jim Pennington from the Rock Foundation. I think he'll be on with us. I'm not sure about that for sure, but yeah, anyway, so thanks for tuning in to Outer Limits, and hope to see you again. So good night, everybody, and come back next week.